Hi guys, I'm Mike and we are F1 fanatics and we have just finished watching the Mexico Grand Prix and Lewis Hamilton has won again, which means that he only needs to win by a greater margin of 4 points to Valtteri Bottas next week to clinch another World Drivers title. And it was an absolutely fantastic race by Lewis. We'll come on to that race later on, but for now, we'll start off our race reaction to it by going through 1 to 20 in the race finishing. So number 1 in P1 was Lewis Hamilton, P2 was Sebastian Vettel, P3 was Valtteri Bottas, Charles Leclerc came in P4, screwed over by Ferrari strategy really, and a slow pit stop just really wasn't Charles Leclerc's day. Alex Albon P5 beats Max Verstappen again. Obviously, element of fortune still to that, but a really fantastic drive by Alexander Albon. And P6 was Max Verstappen working his way back up through the field. A really good, a good recovery drive by Max Verstappen, maximising what he could do. One of the drivers of the day in P7 was Checo Perez in his home Grand Prix, finishing best of the rest, holding off Danny Rick at the end, was absolutely fantastic. A little bit fortunate, obviously, with Daniel Ricciardo locking up on his attempted move on Perez, but still was a fantastic drive by the Mexican driver. 8 was Daniel Ricciardo, and again, he drove an absolutely fantastic race. 50 laps on his first stint on the hard compound. Really good from him there, and getting a strong points per finish from Renault. Really what they needed after, obviously, the week they had after Suzuka. Daniel Kvyat finished in P9 and Gasly P10. A little bit controversial with that because obviously nearing the end, Daniel Kvyat made a move on Hulkenberg, clipped his back tyre, sent Hulkenberg into the wall. It'd be interesting to see your guys' thoughts on whether you think maybe a penalty should be applied there because was maybe a bold move. He wasn't really alongside him, and he's just literally thrown Hulkenberg into the wall. So a little bit naughty from him there. Lance Stroll coming in P12, again, comfortably beaten by Perez, not getting the best out. Ashley is in the comments, who's obviously F1 fanatics as well, and has just informed me he keeps up to date with all the things I can't while I'm live streaming. So he's been given a 10-second penalty for causing a collision, and I think that's completely fair. He wasn't getting anywhere past, and he's ruined Hulkenberg's race. So, not great by him there. Carlos Sainz, a frustrating race for McLaren, really screwed over by doing well in qualifying, which doesn't really seem fair because the soft compound was just kind of torn up and meant that they had to go on a 2-stop strategy. Obviously, Norris was, we'll come on to him, was screwed over by the team on the pit stop. Not a great race for McLaren and not a great race for Carlos Sainz, P13. Giovinazzi in P14, again beating Raikkonen. Ashley will tell me in the comments, I actually missed it in the race. Suddenly I was aware that Raikkonen had retired. I don't know if it was a mechanical issue, but yes. P15 was Kevin Magnussen, P16 George Russell, P17 Roman Grosjean, and the Kubica of Williams rounding up the last Class 5 finishers in 18th position. And unfortunately, Haas have now dropped into that position with Williams, where in a race, they're kind of becoming irrelevant. They're just so far off at the back that they're not really competing with anyone else. Magnussen, I'm just looking at it here, was a whole... he was a whole 4 seconds behind Giovinazzi, which absolutely massive, that gap that is now forming. Non-classified finishers were Raikkonen, and then obviously Lando Norris as well. Was doing really well, running in the points, and then had the pit stop where he got the green light. His tyre wasn't on properly, stopped at the end of the pit lane. They had to push him back. He then was 1 lap down. And basically his race was over. He tried to do something. He was running 2 laps down in the end, and they just were like, save the parts, let's retire him from the race. That was a run through of 1 to 20 in the race, guys. And I suppose the first point we should really talk about is Lewis Hamilton. For me, an absolutely fantastic drive. My driver of the day. He complained he didn't think it was right at the time. That they thought they pitted him too early, but it turned out to be absolutely spot on. He managed those hard tyre compounds really well. The tyre degradation wasn't great, maintained great race pace on them as well. And was a really good drive by Lewis Hamilton. Like, can't say how impressed I was by him. They didn't even get close to him in the end. There wasn't a way. Obviously, we can say that it's a little bit with the wake that the cars come up with. They obviously, they make it not easy to get on thoughts there. Right. They do not make it easy to follow. And it meant that Sebastian Vettel couldn't really get close in that pursuit at the end. But really great stint there. Sebastian Vettel and Valtteri Bottas drove very good. It proved that the one stop was the strategy to go. And Vettel did very well not to be taken on the undercut by Valtteri Bottas. Very solid race by him and Bottas. Great for them. Charles Leclerc, it never really felt like a two-stop race to me. And as soon as they pitted Charles Leclerc in the lead so early, his race was kind of over from then, having to pit again late on. And then when he did come in for his second pit stop, they cocked up. He was, I think it was one of the tyres weren't on properly. So he had to wait longer in the pit stop. I think he lost about 4 seconds on that pit stop, which obviously wasn't great for him. And then he was chasing down Valtteri Bottas and then locked up going into a corner. I think it might have been turn 4 that he locked up going into, and just ran deep into the corner, which then he never got close to Valtteri. Then I think the margin he finished behind was about 3 seconds in the end. So there, not great. Probably the first incident really to talk about was that Lewis Hamilton and Verstappen. Very close wheel-to-wheel action. It is so tight through corners 2 and 3. And obviously, unfortunately for Max Verstappen, he came worse off. Then was getting aggressive through the field, trying to overtake, desperately getting up because he had the race pace. And wasn't great indeed. Ash just said, covering Albon put Leclerc in a difficult position that he was always going to struggle to cover. Yeah, that's fair enough. I think realistically, Ferrari should have just backed the pace that they had in the car. And Albon realistically was nowhere near in the end. Yeah, they did cover him off in the race, but it meant that they cost positions to both Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. So a poor decision overall by Ferrari. But Verstappen, then obviously getting the puncture by being too aggressive on the overtake, making his way through the field. 6th was the best he could get. Alexander Albon again is proving that he is just a really solid driver in the Red Bull. And if it hadn't been already, I think they said they were going to confirm it by the US Grand Prix or just post the US Grand Prix. But I fully expect him to retain his seat at Red Bull going into next year, because he's just done a very good job in that Red Bull since getting the seat. And he drives the car well. He maintains a good pace. He's not as good as Max Verstappen, although with everything that's gone on with Max Verstappen in the second half of the season, being frustrated, I think, by the lack of performance of the Red Bull compared to the Ferraris and the Mercedes, he has actually managed to beat Verstappen. So, that was there. Sergio Perez, I think, great drive. Him and Ricciardo going long on the stints. Did mention, I think, in my qualifying reaction yesterday that Perez was going to be in a absolutely great place, being in P11, obviously having the choice of tyres, and he chose to start on that hard compound, and it really paid off for him and Ricciardo going late into the race. So that was really fantastic. I think the midfield battle, I'm going to give Sky Sports credit here. I think there was a lot of overtaking going on in the midfield battle, and it was generally covered a lot better. I don't know if that's because obviously Max Verstappen was further back within the race. Obviously, as usual, the majority of the race was covering the front action and there wasn't really anything going on. But we certainly got to see some overtakes early doors through that midfield pack. We saw Danny Ricciardo doing a few overtakes. We got to see Sergio Perez doing some overtakes and some fighting there, and some fighting between Carlos Sainz and Verstappen, and I think with one of the Toro Rossos throughout the race as well. So that was really good to see, and as fans, it's what we want to see. We want to see that on-track action, because the midfield action has been so great this year. So it is, really interesting to see there. Ash, did you realise why Raikkonen had to retire? I'll leave him to comment there before we go. But we'll move on to Lando Norris. And he's had an absolutely superb rookie season. For me, he is the rookie of the year. But he's also been so unlucky this year. So many incidents where he's had to retire or his race has been cost by a mistake that was out of his hands. And today it was his pit crew. Um, he the McLaren, it was noted, I think, by Will Buxton and a few journalists that there was a dodgy stomach bug going around. I think Pierre Gasly obviously suffered with it as well. So he wasn't quite on form, but obviously still getting a P10 finish as well was good on the points finish there. But yeah, McLaren team apparently had suffered quite a lot with this stomach bug that was going around. I don't know if that played any effect on his pit stop, but basically the green line went. Lando Norris went, but his tyre wasn't fixed properly. He was able to carry on with the race, but in the end, it was no point. He had to retire because, it was basically useless. Save the parts for races at the end of the season. They want to make sure that they get that P4 in the constructors. And, well, actually, Toro Rosso have done them a favour by spinning out Hulkenberg at the end there. Or actually, I don't know, because Hulkenberg still is classified here as P11 with retiring. So I don't know with the 10-second penalty to Kvyat whether Hulkenberg is promoted back into the points. Not sure on that one. Ash will clear that one up in the comments for me. But yeah, Raikkonen wasn't clear. It was just going to say they just DNF'd. Don't know if it was a mechanical failure, just something. He just retired. Maybe Kimi Raikkonen was just bored, because the Alfa Romeo performance, we've spoken about it, is their 2019 season's over. They can't really get any higher up in the constructors title. 8th is pretty much their position. So his interest probably in the season is probably waned. And if he's not going to get anything out of it and the car's not feeling great, he's not going to necessarily continue and finish the race. Overall thoughts of the race, I thought it was a pretty good race, although it was one that teased that it was going to be exciting. But again, Martin Brundle, I think, was spot on at the end of the race in terms of how we need to get these 2021 regs right, especially at the top of the field, to make sure that following the cars is a lot easier, because obviously at the front of the field, the cars have a lot more superior downforce, creates more dirty air and a bigger wake behind them in the car, makes it more difficult to follow, which means close racing and hard racing at the top of the field is a lot harder. And you see in the midfield where the downforce packages aren't as good, there is a lot more closer racing. The cars are able to follow each other a lot more, and there is a lot more overtaking within that midfield. Kvyat does drop 2 places, and Nico gets promoted to 10th. So Renault have made up points on McLaren this weekend, although I think the gap that McLaren have built up over previous race weekends, and obviously the disqualification for Renault in Japan, where it was a double points finish for them, was strict from them, means that, I think P4 is out of their hands, but probably P5 is within their hands. But yeah, guys, that probably sums up the race from our point of view. Not many people on the watching there, so I'll leave the field open to questions and comments there. If you are watching and want to get involved in the question section there, happy to answer. And if not, we will round up, and we have the driver ratings coming out tomorrow, and we will have the full race review podcast with me and Ashley coming out on Tuesday. So, any questions in the comments, guys? We'll leave it to Storm. Maybe any comments from Ash? Maybe not. We'll see. Maybe everyone's a little bit stunned about Lewis Hamilton, how he managed to maintain that stint for so long, and how it probably didn't work out to be as exciting race as what it could have been. I think it would have been really interesting to see if Verstappen hadn't lost those early places, how well he would have done, because he had fantastic race throughout. Obviously, he was overtaking cars that he was meant to be overtaking throughout the field. But maybe that robbed us a little bit, like robbed of an interesting race when Charles Leclerc and him clashed in Suzuka. I'm not sure, but Leclerc's got to feel unlucky after obviously having, from Monza, it's pretty much been downhill for him in terms of strategy and things going right in a race for him. So not great there. but doesn't appear to be. When will Ferraris organise their strategies to benefit both drivers? Is the question from Ash, and the question is, I have no idea. I don't think Ferrari have any idea either. If there's one thing that Ferrari need to seriously work in the postseason, it's, well, one is the overall aero package, so that they're competing from day one. Although they do seem to have a car that does compete in races, but the main thing they need to get right, that's cost them so many points this season, is their race strategy. It has been absolutely woeful at times, and again, they probably had the favoured car. Ashley's a strong advocate of this. Ferrari have the fastest car, but Mercedes have the best race car. And again, that is proven today. It was only a fantastic drive by Sebastian Vettel that really stopped a Mercedes 1-2 in this situation. Any more questions in the comments? Got 4 people watching now. Welcome. If you are just coming in, you are free to answer. This is the Q&A part of the reaction. If not, we will end the video there. Okay, guys, looks like no more questions in the comments. So, like I said, we will be back tomorrow. I will be doing the driver ratings, where we rate all the drivers' races out of 10 and give our thoughts there. And obviously join us and let us know your thoughts on the driver ratings there. And also, guys, if we can, we have our full race review podcast on Tuesday, where me and Ash will look at the race in a bit more depth, a little bit more at the incidents, and give our overall thoughts. And like I said, Lewis Hamilton needs just 4 more points, or a gap, a winning margin of more than 4 points now, to secure that 6th Drivers' World title, which is an absolutely fantastic achievement. And yeah, has been a brilliant drive from the British driver. But guys, that's it for now. You F1 fans, remember, keep racing.